Hi, Matt with etrailer. Today we're going to be talking about our SumoSprings Solo Helper Springs on our front axle on our 2023 Jeep Gladiator. Now this is going to be a great suspension enhancement as opposed to what comes standard on your Jeep. Now this is going to give you more stability and going to be great for going off-roading or if you have a heavy load on the front of your Jeep. And as for the material, on top we're going to have this steel with a black powder coat finish to it, so it's going to be resistant to rusting. And for the spring itself, it's going to be made from a microcellular urethane, and what that's going to do is help it be more resistant to anything on the road like salts, oils, or anything else like that. Now you can get this as two different kits. One is just a standard, or one with a spacer. That's just going to be put on top of here, and that's just going to be for if you have a lift kit installed on your vehicle and you need that extra space so it's not sitting up too high and not making contact at all. And with the Jeep being very customizable, whether you're adding winches or new bumpers to the front of it, this is going to be able to stand up to that with a weight capacity of up to 1,400 pounds. Now you're probably never going to reach that amount. That's just what this is rated for, so you know it's going to be able to stand up to whatever you throw at it. And now that we've taken a look at the features, I'm going to show you how to install it. Now to start off the install, first we're going to get our vehicle prepped up. And so what we're going to do is we're going to chalk our back tires. Then after that, we want to make sure it's in parked and have your parking brake on. And then we're going to jack it up and put two jack stands on either side, making sure the front is lifted up so we can access it. And then I'd recommend grabbing some penetrating oil and just spraying those bolts that you're going to be messing with. First things first is when we're taking our tires off, make sure you break these loose before you lift it up. And after when you've lifted it up, we can just grab our impact tool and take our bolts off. Now we're just going to lift up, pull it towards us, and set this aside. So we're going to have two 10mm bolts we're going to have to take off. So this is going to be the first one, and the second one is going to be up here. And it's going to be right next to this other piece here that we're going to use a trim tool to remove. So we're just going to come over here and just unbolt this. And once you have this all the way off, you're going to have this tab that's in here that's going to be removed too. And I'll show you how to do that in a second. And then just pivot this out and slide it forward. You might have to wiggle it just a little bit. Just like that. Now we can move to up top. I remove this bolt too. And with that removed, we can now grab our trim tool and pop this loose. Just lifting on the back, getting underneath it, sliding this through, and applying pressure. Just like that. And with this loose, we can remove this next bolt, which is going to be a 15mm. I'm just going to come over here, loosen this up. Next up is going to be loosening up this sway bar. And we're just going to remove these two bolts on this bracket. That's going to drop this, and we're going to do that on both sides. You can make this a little bit easier by removing the skid, but we still have access to that since we're using that extender. And we're just going to come under here, line everything up, applying your pressure, and take it off. And now with both bolts removed, we can have this drop down a bit. Now before we proceed to the next step, we're just going to grab our floor jack and jack this up until it's making contact with this bracket on the bottom, because this is going to be the last thing holding up our axle once we remove our bolt from our shock. Now we're just going to take this 18mm wrench, put it on the back side so it holds everything in place, and grabbing our socket wrench, and we're going to loosen this up now. And then you'll get to the point where you can just remove this bolt with your hand. And now we can work on driving this bolt out. And we just want to make sure that this shock is out of the way and none of these brake lines are going to get caught on anything. And when everything looks good, we can start our jack very carefully because we want that spring to extend. You go a little bit at a time, going back and forth, because we just want this a little bit to where the spring is going to unseat either at the top or bottom. Might have to wiggle it some to help you. But once you get to this point, you can just pull it right through. And with our jounce bumper accessible now, we're going to just get some soapy water, spray it a little bit, so it's going to be a little bit easier to remove. And then I'm going to grab our trim tool and help me get it off. Just kind of sticking it underneath and pulling on it some. Just like that. And now when we're looking at either one, you'll probably notice we do have quite a bit of a size difference. This is how they're going to compare. And you can kind of see this wider portion. That's going to be where it's not exposed. And this darker portion is kind of be what's going to be exposed. And as you can see here, there's quite a bit of a difference. So this one's going to make contact before our jounce bumper is. And what's nice about that is you're going to get more of that resistance first, but it's not going to be a harsh resistance. But that first 20% of it, it's going to be a nice, easy give, so you don't have to be gripping the steering wheel when you're going over those hard bumps. Now after that, you're going to start getting that progressive load control, giving you more stability on your car. So now we can take a closer look at our hardware itself. So besides the SumoSpring itself, we're going to have these 16mm bolts and washer with it. And along with that, you're going to have some blue Loctite. Now we're doing this for demonstration purposes today, so we won't be using the blue Loctite. But the way you would just apply it is just on some of these threads. And the way this is just going to install is the SumoSpring going underneath and us putting that bolt through the top. So getting back in here is a little bit tough, especially with this fender right here. So what we're going to do is use this 3-inch extender and this 16mm socket. And how we're going to do that is just by lifting this back, grabbing our bolt and our socket, making sure everything's pretty close together, and placing them in there. And I'm going to use my finger underneath to kind of guide this bolt where it needs to sit. Now since we have our socket wrench attached to our bolt, we can grab our SumoSpring and thread it onto that bolt that's coming through and tighten everything up. We want to make sure we apply pressure to our socket wrench so this can thread on. And from this point on, we can put everything back together, doing it in the reversed order as we took it off. Now if you do have the 2-inch spacer, the installation is going to be the exact same as this one, only it's going to sit just on top of this, and want to run our hardware through the top of this and connect these right here. Now something that helped us get this spring back in place is we started it with just the spring on our SumoSpring, and then we actually threaded the spring into place until we were able to get it lifted up and placed back on here. And now what we're going to do is just raise this back up, make sure we connect our shock back into place and our brake line into place. Now I don't recommend putting your sway bar back into place because you want to leave this down so you can repeat that process on the other side. And that was just a look at our SumoSprings on our 2023 Jeep Gladiator.